Part 2. Officer pulls over nurse for speeding, shocked to see his own son in the passenger seat. Imagine this. You're driving home after a long, exhausting shift. You're a nurse, and every minute counts when lives are on the line. Your mind is racing with all the things you've seen and done that day, and you're just trying to get home to catch a few hours of sleep before it all starts again tomorrow. But then, out of nowhere, you notice flashing lights in your rearview mirror. You're being pulled over. Your heart skips a beat, wondering what you did wrong. As the officer approaches your car, you're hoping this is a quick stop. Just a warning maybe. You know you might have been going a little over the speed limit, but nothing too crazy. You roll down your window, ready to apologize, when the officer's expression changes. He's not just surprised, he's in shock. The words catch in his throat as he stares into your car. His eyes dart from you to your passenger, and you follow his gaze. Sitting right next to you, in the passenger seat, is your teenage son. But here's the twist. This isn't just any officer. The man standing in front of you is your son's father. He hasn't seen his son in months. They're no longer in each other's lives after a messy split, and neither of you expected this chance meeting today. In that moment, a flood of emotions washes over both of you. Confusion, anger, and maybe even guilt. It's an intense, silent standoff. You can feel the weight of it in the air, but the officer isn't just stunned by the sight of his son. There's more to this story. Why was the nurse speeding? What led to this unexpected reunion? And what will happen next? The tension is building, and you can tell this is no ordinary traffic stop. What was meant to be a routine check has quickly spiraled into something much bigger, much deeper. There are questions that need answers, and emotions that have been buried for far too long are about to surface. And just when you think it couldn't get any more complicated, the officer receives an urgent call on his radio. Something's happened. Something serious. But what could it be? How will this strange, tense moment between two people with so much history unfold now? This is where we leave things hanging, on the edge, with more questions than answers. What would you do if you were in their shoes? How will this father and mother navigate the unexpected, raw moment in front of them? And what will happen next with their son? You won't want to miss the next part of this unfolding story. Stay tuned. As the officer stares into the car, he can barely process what he's seeing. His mind races, memories flooding back. He hadn't seen his son in months, since the messy divorce that tore their family apart. They had always planned to keep things civil for their child, but life didn't turn out that way. Work, stress, disagreements, everything piled up, and communication became impossible. The boy, stuck in the middle, was left wondering why his dad wasn't around as much anymore. The nurse, sitting behind the wheel, shifts uncomfortably. She knows this isn't going to be an easy conversation, but she never imagined seeing her ex-husband like this. During a random traffic stop, she glances at her son, who is staring out the window, avoiding eye contact. He hasn't spoken a word since they got pulled over, but she can feel the tension radiating from him. He's angry. Angry at his dad for disappearing. Angry at the situation. Maybe even angry at her. But how could she explain everything to him? It's not that simple. The officer clears his throat, trying to regain some composure. He was supposed to be doing his job, yet here he is, standing face to face with the very people he's been trying to avoid for months. His son looks older, taller, quieter. He wants to say something, but he doesn't know where to start. "Mom, you were speeding," he finally says, his voice shaky. He's trying to stick to the script, keep things professional, but the emotion is obvious. She nods, knowing it was true. She had been driving too fast, trying to get home. But there was more to it than that. Her day had been a nightmare. Back-to-back emergencies at the hospital, barely a minute to breathe. And her son had called her earlier, upset about something. That had happened at school. She could hear the frustration in his voice. And she promised she'd be there to talk when she got home. That's why she was rushing. She was just trying to make it in time to be the mom her son needed. But now, things were spiraling out of control. The son, still staring out the window, suddenly speaks. "Are you gonna give her a ticket or what?" His voice is cold, sharp. The question cuts through the tension, making both adults flinch. The officer swallows hard, feeling the weight of his son's anger. This was the first time he'd heard his son speak directly to him in months, and it wasn't exactly what he'd hoped for. The nurse shoots a glance at her son, warning him to calm. He's hurting. She knows that. The divorce had been hard on him, and no matter how much she tried to make things right, there were some things she just couldn't fix. Her son needed his dad, and deep down, she still hoped they could figure something out for his sake. The officer takes a deep breath and crouches down to look his son in the eye. "I'm not here to give anyone a ticket," he says softly, his voice breaking. I didn't know you were in the car." He looks at his ex-wife, searching her face for something. An explanation maybe. But she just looks tired, worn out from the day, from the months of trying to hold everything together. "I was just doing my job," he continues, still speaking to his son. "But seeing you here, it changes everything." He reaches for the door handle, and before he can think twice, he opens the door. "Can we talk, please? Just for a minute." The boy doesn't move at first, just sits there, arms crossed, eyes fixed on the horizon. But after what feels like forever, he slowly unbuckles his seatbelt and steps out of the car. The officer stands, unsure of what to say next, but grateful. His son is at least willing to listen. Meanwhile, the nurse watches from inside the car, her heart pounding. She's relieved they're talking, but she can't help but worry. What if this conversation goes wrong? What if more damage is done? She grips the steering wheel tightly, wishing there was a way to protect her son from the pain of the past. As father and son stand awkwardly on the side of the road, the tension is thick. The officer tries to break the silence, apologizing for everything that happened, admitting he could have handled things better. "I'm sorry I wasn't there," he says, his voice heavy with regret. "But I want to be there now. If you'll let me." The boy looks up at him, his face unreadable. "Why now?" he asks, his voice quieter now, but still full of hurt. "Why not before?" The question hangs in the air, and the officer doesn't know how to answer. There's no easy explanation, no way to undo the months of absence, the broken promises. But before he can respond, the sound of a radio crackles to life from the officer's belt. It's the urgent call he'd been dreading. The situation at work has just escalated, and he's needed immediately. But how can he leave now, in the middle of this crucial moment with his son? The clock is ticking, and he knows he's running out of time to fix things, to make things right. The nurse watches them from the car, anxiety rising in her chest. She can tell something's happening, something big. The officer hesitates, torn between his duty and his family. The boy watches him closely, waiting to see what his dad will choose. Will he stay and finally be the father he promised to be? Or will he walk away again, just like before? The tension is unbearable, and as the officer reaches for his radio, the scene is set for the climax. An impossible choice between work and family, between the past and the future. The next move will change everything, but what will it be? Stay tuned to find out. The officer stands frozen, his hand hovering over the radio, The urgent call is echoing in his ears, but his son is standing right there, waiting for something, anything, to show that his dad is willing to be present, that things can change. The weight of the moment presses down on him. His job demands his attention, but this is his son. How many more chances would he get to make this right? The nurse watches from the car, her pulse quickening. She knows how important this decision is for their son. If he leaves now, it could shatter any hope of them rebuilding a relationship. The boy, silent and tense, stands at the edge of an emotional cliff. Everything he's been holding in for months, the confusion, the anger, the loneliness, has been boiling beneath the surface. Waiting for a moment like this, the officer finally lowers his hand from the radio and takes a deep breath. He knows what he has to do. "I'm staying," he says, his voice steady now, looking his son directly in the eye. "I'm here, and I'm not leaving." For the first time, the boy's posture softens. He doesn't say anything, but his expression shifts, just enough to show that maybe, just maybe, he's starting to believe his dad. The silence between them is heavy, but it's no longer filled with resentment. It's filled with something new. Possibility. There's a chance to rebuild, to heal, and both father and son can feel it. The nurse exhales, relieved but still uncertain. She steps out of the car, walking over to where they stand. "This can't be a one-time thing," she says gently, looking at her ex-husband. "He needs you, not just today, but always. Are you ready for that?" The officer nods, his face serious. "I am. I know I've messed up, but I'm ready to make it right. I want to be here for him, for both of you." For a moment, the three of them stand there, united in the middle of a situation they never saw coming. It's not perfect, and there's still a long way to go, but it's a start, the first step towards something better. Suddenly the radio crackles, again, pulling the officer back to reality. This time, it's a different officer responding to the call. The situation he was supposed to rush off to has been handled. He breathes a sigh of relief, knowing he made the right choice by staying. The boy finally speaks, his voice softer now. "Are you really gonna stay?" It's a question filled with hope, but also fear. He's been disappointed before, and he doesn't want to get his hopes up, only to be let down again. The officer looks his son in the eye, his expression sincere. "I'm not going anywhere, I promise." It's a small moment, but for the boy, it's everything. He doesn't smile, but he nods, accepting the promise for now. There's still a lot to figure out, but for the first time in a long time, there's a sense of peace between them. The nurse, watching this, feels a flicker of hope. She's been holding everything together on her own for so long, and now, maybe, things will start to change. Maybe they can find a new kind of normal, one that includes both parents in their son's life. It won't be easy, but she's willing to try. As the tension eases, the officer turns to his ex-wife. "Thank you," he says quietly, "for everything. I'll be better." She nods, not needing more words right now. Actions will speak louder in the days to come. But for this moment, standing together as a family, it's enough. As they get back in the car, the boy sits a little straighter in the passenger seat, glancing over at his mom. For the first time in a long time, the future doesn't seem quite so uncertain. The road ahead is long, but now they're not traveling it alone. And that's the story of how a routine traffic stop became the beginning of something new. A chance for a father to reconnect with his son and a family to start healing. It's a reminder that sometimes the most unexpected moments can lead to the most meaningful changes. Stay tuned for more stories like this, where real-life moments turn into life-changing experiences.